Lineage Series, Book 1, Chapter 5. The sun gradually peeked over the horizon, and the first few pink rays of early dawn were sufficient light for the monks as they packed supplies on their mules. Senya monks were forbidden any possessions, and the 2 gray mules had been a communal gift from the nearby village of Foxborough. As such, they were old, and life with the Senya had become their retirement. The Senya had a cavalry, a holdover from days when their martial abilities were more frequent use, but for travel between towns, these humble mounts would suffice. "We will head toward the town of Hambor," Master Isaac said. He quickly remembered the respects now due his companion and newly made master, and finished with, "If you agree." "Why would we head there?" the young monk asked. "There is someone there who I believe can help us." "Someone who would know the location of the scrolls?" "No, not the scrolls, though if he can help us we may find those as well. But now we are searching for something else. Or rather, someone." "Someone?" Master Isaac avoided giving a reply as he checked his saddle's girth, but the younger was not so easily deterred. He knew that silence from the older masters meant something was important. "Master, who?" he asked. Then, exercising for the first time his new privilege to demand answers, he added in an uncertain yet firm tone, "Tell me." "The Darkon." "The one who even you fear?" "That's the one," he replied quickly. Despite his monk's habit, Isaac had some pride, and hated admitting fear of any other. "You believe he may have the scrolls?" "I do not know." Isaac let the gender slip pass. "But it's a trail to pursue. Perhaps the only one we have." "Then we go to Hambor," the young monk agreed. The ancient Roers University had expanded over the centuries to include so many schools for all ages and courses of study that it overtook its hometown and became a city in itself. The once dominant village of Lanark changed into a wealthy suburb where nobles housed their children attending the schools. The Senya Abbey had once been part of Lanark, and still bore the name, but development had moved the town farther northeast, and now the small village of Foxborough was closer to the abbey. As with many things, the modern inhabitants had conveniently forgotten that the university, abbey, and town were Darkon creations, and no descendant of the founders could be seen on any campus. Milan rode to the appointed address, among the many walled properties in Lanark. The high walls that bordered several of the main roads were also of Darkon make, although they were not master masons like their ancient southwestern neighbors the Amako, who built towering spires with delicate and intricate carvings. The Darkon style, inspired by the boulder labyrinth leading to Helling, used large stones cut precisely to fit without mortar. The modern residents had whitewashed the old stones to give the ancient area a cleaner and brighter look, just as they had washed all Darkon history. Near the manor gate, 2 guards busied themselves packing their saddlebags with wrapped dried food. One slid his long sword through the bundle of a rolled blanket, while the other polished the silver buttons of his surcoat. "Look what's coming now," the first said as he gave his companion a hit on the arm. The other looked up from his buttons, and, with a quick glance at her dark clothes and the sword on her back, instantly knew what she was. "We don't need her kind telling us what to do," the second noted. The men's view was a common one. Guards hired by wealthy nobles resented the Darkons who often took their jobs. Even if they were not replaced, the guards were often forced to follow the commands of the Darkon, a situation none liked. As the average Darkon grew poorer, they became more reliant on such occupations, and the job competition was driving their unpopularity. As Milan came closer, the men looked at her and laughed. She gave them a perfunctory glance that noted their spotless uniforms, blades without nicks, scuffless leather, hands free of scars, and beardless faces, and then turned away. These men may have been trained as guards, but they were young, and neither they nor their gear had ever seen a real fight. "Well, well, what do we have here?" one asked. "I don't know," the second said. "Looks like a little girl who thinks she's going to be a guard on this trip." Milan just shook her head. They weren't even worth wasting breath to insult. She began to pass them, but the first stepped in front of her. "Now look here. I think you're lost, little girl, he said. The second stood at Milan's right and added, You see, I'm Alfric, and this is Wade, and we're the guards on this trip. So, don't get any ideas, Wade finished. She could hardly believe she was hearing such idiocy, and did not dignify it with comment. With a little kick, Epone galloped off. Wade barely had time to jump out of the way. The gravel path curved around to the back entrance. A person of her station could not enter at the front. The large sliding door of the back sitting room was open wide, so that a pair of attendants could load bags and boxes into an already heavily laden cart. The excessive packing made Milan sure, more than ever, that this girl had to be a little brat. Then again, overpacking left no room for passengers under the low covering of the cart, and after a glance toward the stable, Milan saw no sign of a litter. The brat must at least intend to ride. She'd have to, as the poor manservant carried out yet another box. Hope she didn't forget anything, Milan said to the manservant. He gave her an agreeing roll of his eyes as he struggled under his load. Milan jumped from Epone, tied him to a post, and then entered the back sitting room. The house's interior was so immaculate that it didn't seem possible anyone could live there. The rigid angles of the furniture's construction and arrangement, combined with muted colors, drained all warmth from the room. Everything was so straight that Milan found herself correcting her posture to match. She was a dirty Darkon, unrefined and impolite, standing in the middle of a clean and perfect sitting room of a wealthy nobleman. This was the world of the cultured and refined, not at all where she belonged. In the commotion of final preparations, Milan's arrival had gone unnoticed by rushing servants, until a handmaiden dressed in impeccably clean muted tones drifted into the room and almost as quickly disappeared into the woodwork. A snarl of disgust appeared and swiftly vanished from her face at the sight of Milan's tatterdemalion appearance. She cleared her throat to announce her presence, and Milan returned to a slight slouch, as her subversive nature re-emerged. "You are from Edwin of the travel agency, yes?" the handmaiden asked in a childish falsetto. Milan only nodded. "Good," the servant said. "Follow me, please." Milan followed her through the house to a white sitting room where 3 servants were waiting with their mistress, the nobleman's daughter. Milan got a brief glance at the girl and her entourage in their natural state before her presence was noticed. The 3 servants seated around their mistress were dressed in as colorless tones as the first, and looked bored, if not depressed. Milan assumed the general glumness was their lack of enthusiasm to leave their rich surroundings for a long trip through the woods. Lady Khan was younger than Milan expected, probably 15, while Milan was nearly a decade older at 23. The girl's long golden hair, a symbol of nobility as such length was impractical and near impossible to maintain for the laboring peasants, was not hidden beneath a headdress. She had adopted the latest fashion among the bolder schoolgirls, who wore only a broad, highly embroidered fillet across the front to hold their hair away from their face while allowing its full length to flow down the back. Her blue eyes matched her gown, which seemed icy cold when combined with her fashionably pale face, but her greeting was warm. Milan's presence was noted before the handmaiden announced her. All the servants looked at Milan the way the first had, but the brat smiled when Milan entered. "You are Milan, are you not?" she asked. "I am," Milan said, while looking at the servants, who in her opinion were very impolite with their staring. "Wonderful!" the girl said, standing up. The handmaidens jumped up instantly when their mistress approached Milan. "I am Kara Khan. I'm so glad to have you along for the trip," she said, reaching out her hand to shake Milan's. A handshake represented a contractual agreement, and Milan shook Kara's hand to cement her place as guard. Agreement made, the 2 began walking out of the house. "I insisted on having you as a guard," Kara continued rapid fire. "Well, not you by name, but I asked for the best. My father thought it would be a little much, having so many guards, but I can always talk him into things. Besides, it's my safety we're talking about. And of course, as soon as I explained that with all the stories one hears these days, he naturally insisted that I must have escorts in my entourage. I've been so eager to meet you. I think your work is remarkable. Just between us?" Kara said as she dropped her voice to a conspiratorial whisper and leaned in. "I would love to be a warrior, but it would really work for a noble girl to be anything but a refined lady." Really, I am fascinated with the Darkons. There's so many ancient stories and rumors and myths and legends and all. I insisted that if I was going to be in Lanark, home of the Darkons, I had to meet one. By now the conversation had carried them outside, near the male servants struggling to load the cart. Milan opened her mouth to object to Kara's comment, to say she wasn't a Darkon, or at least not anymore, but the excited chatterbox cut her off. Oh, please don't think me a spoiled overpacker. My father insists on bringing all these things along, so we don't have enough waiting at the estate already, or he won't let me into town to order new clothes once I arrive. I might as well pull up the whole house and bring it along. Kara laughed. Milan simply stood and looked blankly at Kara. She had not come to befriend or entertain the girl, but to work a job that required no familiarity between the two. And that was how Milan preferred it. Kara's laughing fell short at her joke's cold reception. She cleared her throat in embarrassment, and then continued. Well, I can't wait to get started. It seems such a nice day for a ride, and one has hardly heard any tales of highway robbery this past month. Conditions could not appear more favorable. I think this will be a great trip. What do you think? Kara asked. I think you talk too much. Oh, yes, I'm sure there are some who'd agree with you. A noble daughter is to be seen and not heard. Kara replied so quickly that she seemed not to have realized what she'd agreed to. But her own laugh faded quickly, with the realization that Milan's statement meant she did not care to speak or listen to her. Milan had hoped that her verbose client's eagerness would translate into a quick start on their journey, but instead they set out on a seemingly unending goodbye tour among her school friends and acquaintances. At each house, Kara tried to insist on introducing Milan, but Milan had staunchly, silently refused. She waited outside and kept a sharp eye on the two guards who postured, pretending they didn't see the admiring schoolgirls passing by the gate where they stood. The 7th manor, with the 7th pot of tea, the 7th set of sandwiches, and the 7th round of parting gifts, finally brought them near the edge of Lanark. Here the road split to either swing north across the thinnest and most populated part of the woods, or south on the shorter road through the dense uninhabited forest. Although Milan blocked out most of their inane chatter, a comment Alfric made about the short length of the trip caught her attention. You don't plan on the Marcel Road, Milan interrupted. The two gazed at her, not only with a look of disgust, but the blank stare of ignorance. They don't even know the local name of the roads, Milan realized in surprise. She clarified. The Southern Road. No reason to go days out of our way on the Northern Road, Wade said with a sneer at her reasonable concern he mistook for fear. Lord Khan approved that plan, Milan asked skeptically. In annoyance, the pair took longer to turn toward her this time. Lord Khan trusts his servants, Alfric said. He will appreciate us saving his daughter a week of uncomfortable travel when we arrive early. If you arrive at all, Milan muttered. The two looked at her in suspicion. But she had taken care not to mutter in the common tongue. They could only guess what curse the uncivilized Darkon had cast at them. Wade, clearly the more suspicious of the pair, made a quick gesture to ward off ill will. Milan wished she could curse them, with any illness that would prevent them from traveling, so they could not make such horrible decisions. Dutifully trying to lessen the impact of their stupidity, Milan persisted. You do know a stretch of the Marcel Road runs through an outlaw's refuge. We do not fear outlaws, Wade snapped. If you're afraid, you can run back to your mother. She could not cast spells, but breaking their legs was becoming a tempting option. The pennant and tapestry cart covering advertised its contents like a traveling acting troupe advertised their show. The whole group would make a brilliantly colored target in the dark woods. Her contract was to protect the girl, and that she could do by any road. Milan had no obligation to the guards if they chose to get themselves killed. The monks rode through the main gates into Hamburg, headed west, and up the narrow hill road to the curiosity shop. As Isaac went in, the younger waited outside with the mules, trying to keep them out of the way of passing carts and pedestrians. Edwin sat cataloguing his back room when he heard the bell ring, and as usual, looked up expectantly. When he saw it was a Seigneur, Edwin swept the items he was cataloguing, stolen Seigneur possessions, off the table, and then threw some papers over the catalogue book, so no one could see the list of Seigneur items. Edwin blew out his candles and walked out into the store. Hello, Master, Isaac said first. I need some information. Oh, information isn't exactly my business, Despite being caught off guard, Edwin quickly fell into a casual manner. "But you hear much in my trade. What is it you need?" "Did a Darkon come through here recently?" Master Isaac asked. A Darkon? Edwin's mind flew back to the office. Maybe those things Milan had stolen were hotter than he thought. Still, he stayed relaxed. "Many pass through here selling what they can at any price. I'm looking for a particular one, Milan. Have you seen her?" "Milan," Edwin repeated, and paused as if trying to remember, but he needed no time to think of his lie. "Can't say I know when I've last seen her." "Edwin, I know you are a friend of hers," Master Isaac said. Edwin's eyes jumped to Isaac's at the sound of his own name. No Seigneur ever came to his shop, nor knew his name, nor much less knew of his friendship with Milan. Isaac continued, "I know more about her than you think. She does not speak well of us, I'm sure. However, her father was a close friend of mine, and until her death so was her mother. I need to find Milan before others do." Slowly Edwin nodded. "She was here." Edwin explained all he remembered of Milan's last visit, and of the job he had offered her. "And the lady herself came to request this?" Master Isaac asked. "No, it was one of Lord Khan's servants. Kind of a dark fellow with scars across his face and neck. He told me his master wished for a Darkon escort for his daughter. They'll be traveling through some dangerous land, so I didn't doubt him. The man left a box of silver as down payment for the Darkon that took the job." "And Milan took it?" "Yes." Master Isaac's face grew grim at this. He knew something was not right. "Thank you for your time. You have been very helpful," he told Edwin. "Anything to help Milan," Edwin replied. "Oh, and Master..." Edwin hesitated before reaching into the inside pocket of his jacket. His hand remained there a moment. "Milan left this. She didn't say who it was for, but I think you will know." He pulled the envelope from his jacket and handed it to Isaac. Immediately Isaac saw the Seigneur writing on the front, and his chest tightened in dreaded comprehension. The letter was not addressed to him, but he knew several possibilities of its contents, and none of them were pleasant. As Isaac's hand closed on it, Edwin looked him gravely in the eye. "I know not what rumors may be around, but I know I've seen far more Darkons in these parts, and they never stay long. I haven't seen so many since the Terror." "There are rumors," Isaac admitted. A look of horror crossed Edwin's face. Now energized by a graver fear than he had begun with, Isaac tucked the letter into his own jacket and spoke quickly. "If you see any more Darkons, try to glean what you can from them. I'm afraid the council will not act without irrefutable evidence." "Thank you, Edwin." Master Isaac's hand was on the door when Edwin spoke again. "Do you recall... is Milan ambidextrous?" Isaac looked at Edwin, confused by the question, but replied, "She's left-handed, like her mother." "I thought so," Edwin mumbled quietly. Leaving the shopkeep lost in his thoughts, Isaac exited the store. Immediately he said to the younger monk, "It's as I guessed. We must head southeast if we wish to find the one we're looking for."